What's up, guys? Welcome back to Savage Rounds. Today I've got a matchmaking episode for you. This is just going to be some of the fighters from UFC Jacksonville, the Emmett versus Topuria card. You can see it on the screen. Before I get into it, though, go check out my recap of that card. It was the last video I posted. If you haven't seen it yet, go check that one out, and it'll make more sense. This video will then make more sense because I talked a little bit about matchups and stuff in that one. But today I'm going to do Tabitha Ricci, Mateusz Rebecki, Randy Brown, Neil Magny, Bruno Silva, Brendan Allen, David Onama, Amanda Ribas, Macy Barber, Josh Emmett, and Ilia Topuria. Let's get into it. First up, Tabitha Ricci. Good performance against Jillian Robertson. I talked a little bit about the matchups in the last fight, so I won't go too in depth on what they did in the last fight. But good performance from Ricci. Robertson wasn't able to get her down. She did well on the feet. I think just kind of taking the next step in the division, just somebody lower ranked, I believe. Hold up, I can pull up the rankings real quick for her. Strawweight. She is currently 14. I think you just go one spot above her. If she wins this fight, then we can kind of start to jump in the rankings. It just feels like at the top of this division, there's a little bit of a log jam. So I'm going Michelle Waterson Gomez. This will be a good test for Ricci, a step up in competition from Jillian Roberts, I believe, just in terms of who she's fought, what level she's fought at, that kind of deal. So yeah, I think this could be a fun fight and a step up for Ricci. I like this matchup, and it would give Michelle Waterson a chance to get back in the win column after she lost to Luana Pinheiro in her last fight. So yeah, I like this one at 115. Winner gets to move up and either climb back for Michelle Waterson or start the climb for Tabitha Ricci. Next up, Mateusz Rebecki. I really like this guy. I know he gassed in that first fight, his debut in the UFC, and it wasn't against a great opponent, somebody he probably should have gotten out of there. But it's your first performance in the UFC. He still torched the dude and was able to win very clearly. He didn't have any troubles other than the gassing. And we didn't go deep into the third round or even deep into the second round in this previous fight for Rebecki against Loic Radzhabov, but the cardio didn't seem to be an issue there. He was ripping leg kicks, threw really big shots, and like I said, I know we were only in the second round, but the cardio seemed to hold up, and it looked like he would have been fine to carry on the pace he was fighting it into that third round and for a decision. I think you get a big step up here for him. I think he's really talented and one of the better up-and-comers in this division for sure. There's a lot of fun fights from inside the rankings if he can keep winning. So I kind of think normally these guys, you give him like 4 or 5 fights before they get into the rankings. I think you give him someone who is just looking at a ranking. They recently fought to get into the rankings but didn't quite make it, so they're just outside the rankings. And I think, to be honest, it's different situations for both of them, but I'm going to go Marco Madsen. I think for Mark, if he does win this fight, he would need another fight or two to kind of get a look back in the rankings. And then Rebecki, I think if he wins this fight handily, maybe it's one more fight and then the rankings, or you get him straight in there. I think this could be a good test of the wrestling for Rebecki. Radzhabov didn't really get to grapple too much because his legs were so compromised. He couldn't really get the power to push off and get the takedowns. So when he did, Rebecki was able to shuck him off quite easily. So it'd be interesting to see how Marco Madsen comes out and is able to put his offensive wrestling to use. I'm a really big fan of Rebecki. I think he's looked really good. His grappling's great, his striking's great, super well-rounded. So yeah, I think this could be a really fun fight in the lightweight division. And yeah, winner gets, like I said in the last one, the climb back for Marco Madsen to get back into the rankings, or the start of the journey for Rebecki. Yeah, I like this fight. Next up, Randy Brown. This one, I don't want to say I had trouble with it, but it just seems like he's been so close to the rankings so many times. How many fights away is he? It feels like he's always close because of how talented he is, obviously, and he loses to really good guys when he's always on the brink of the ranking. So I think this is another situation like Rebecca. Obviously, different situations for the fighters, but just in terms of who they're fighting. A guy that was real close to the rankings. I think he was just in the rankings. Lost his last fight, got booted out of the rankings. Daniel Rodriguez. I think this would be a really fun fight. Randy Brown would get to show off against a top-level guy. Let me see, because I can't remember off the top of my head who his fight before was. Jack Della Maddalena. That's right. He got bonked. Trinaldo before that. Chaos Williams. Jared Gooden. So he's had a nice little run. Other than that, Jack Della Maddalena. So if he can get this win, I think it's time. If he gets this win against D-Rod, it's time to look towards the rankings for him. Find somebody in the bottom 15 to 10 range. Maybe if they both win their next fights, it could be someone like Neil Magny, get that gatekeeper fight out of the way. But yeah, I think this would be a fun fight, a chance for D-Rod to get back on track against a good opponent, and a chance for Randy Brown to really start pushing towards the rankings. Next up, speaking of him, Neil Magny. This was a tougher one just because it feels like he's fought everyone, and he is the perennial 170 gatekeeper. It's what he does. He seems to have trouble when he moves up against the tough guys, but he beats everybody he's supposed to. And this one, it's really just about he just won. The next person coming down, I think, that would either be on the way out of the rankings or just lost and is trying to get back in the win column to start moving up again. I think the loser of this fight should take on Neil Magny. That would be two. Would that be two in a row for Brady? Hold on. Let's see. I can't even pull that up quick enough. I don't know. I know Brady lost to Bilal. I believe that was the fight that took his O. He was undefeated before that, so I believe Bilal was his first loss. I do, just without going deep into tape and stuff yet, I do feel like Jack Della Maddalena should win this fight. I believe he'll be able to stop takedowns and do good work on the feet. But regardless, whoever loses, I think should take on Neil Magny. It would be a good chance for Brady to get back on track. And if JDM loses, there's no reason to make him fight out of the rankings. He's a really talented guy. And I think even though I don't see it, if he did lose, he's still one of the best guys. Got really great boxing, great takedown defense. So it would just be kind of like a bump in the road for him, and then give him Magny, see if he can get back on track. Or for Brady, if he loses again, I think he'd be... Oh, man, I don't know. I wish I could pull this up faster, but I don't know how many wins he has off the top of my head. I want to say it's like 12 or 14 or something. And then one loss. If he loses to JDM, that would be 2 losses. It would really be like a sink or swim fight for Sean Brady, the Neil Magny one. So, yeah, I really think it would be big implications for either guy, whoever loses to fight Neil Magny. Get back on track, or, like I said, sink or swim. That's a big fight for whoever loses this, just in terms of their ranking and their position in the 170 division. But yeah, next up, Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva is... I don't want to say he needs to get away from the rankings, but I feel like personally, he should fight a little bit lower down on the rankings and have to climb his way back up to looking in that top or bottom of the top 15 kind of spot, because he loses 2 fights, comes back, beats Brad Tavares, which was a good win, good finish, and then he gets a shot at the rankings. I feel like he kind of needs to work his way back up after this one, and I think a good way to do that would be to fight the winner of this fight that's coming up, Roman Kopylov and Claudio Ribeiro. I think both of these guys are really talented. Ribeiro still pretty new to the UFC. He's only had 2 fights. He's 1-1, lost his first, won his second. And Kopylov has had a little bit of turbulence here and there in the UFC, but he's on a really nice run ever since that Albert Duraev fight, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I think either of these guys could end up having a pretty good push up into the division, and a win against Bruno Silva would really kickstart that. I feel like Roman Kopylov has been consistently improving for these past few fights. He's on a good little... I want to say it's like a 3-fight win streak. I really should have double-checked, but I want to say it's a 3-fight win streak. If it's not, it's 2. But a nice little win streak, and Ribeiro, promising prospect, showed off a little bit of the grappling and his wrestling, cage control, clinch in that last fight against Joseph Holmes. So he's showing he's working his other spots other than the striking. He can mix it up. And yeah, like I said, Kopylov been improving each fight. I've been really impressed. His hands look really good. Got decent takedown defense. He can get taken down, but he does well to get back up. We saw it versus Duraev. And yeah, I think it would be a good win for Bruno Silva because you're beating one of the more up-and-coming guys who's on a decent little streak, or whoever wins, or if between the two of them, Kopylov or Ribeiro, won the fight against Bruno Silva, that's a big win for them. Beat a guy who is just fighting inside the rankings against Brendan Allen. So yeah, another fight with big implications for everyone involved. Next up, speaking of him, Brendan Allen. I said this in my my recap video for UFC Jacksonville. I really think Brendan Allen could have a really good little run here in these next few fights. He's looked really good. Like I said about Kopylov, each fight recently he seems to be improving. Obviously, there's always the shot he gets one punch bonked and knocked out. We've seen it happen before. It's not like he has a bad chin because he ate some shots from Bruno Silva, some big shots. He's eaten big shots from other guys and not gone down, but we have seen him get finished on the feet before, so there is always that. But his striking has continued to improve. He was able to drop Bruno Silva on the feet and get the sub, and we know how dangerous his grappling is. And I think a really good test for him would be Roman Dolidze. They've been jawing a little bit back and forth on Twitter today. I know Brendan Allen. I made my matchups a couple days ago, like the day after the fight, so Sunday. And today Brendan Allen was saying he wasn't going to give Roman Dolidze a chance because they had their chance and stuff, but they were both taking the fight on short notice. Dolidze couldn't end up making it because of COVID. And so I just think this is a good matchup. Roman Dolidze coming off of a loss versus Marvin Vettori, which a lot of people thought he won. It was a really close fight. I had Vettori winning, but it was a very close fight, and some people did think Dolidze won. So he needs to get back in the win column regardless if you thought he won it or not. It was a loss on his record, so he needs to get back into the win column. He's a really great fighter, fun fighter, and I think it would be a great spot for Brendan Allen to show he can beat a guy who's fought in that top 5 range before against someone like Marvin Vettori and had a really close fight. Because if he pulls off that win, that's just a huge win in his path to the top if he can make it, if he keeps winning. So yeah, I like this fight for both of them. A good spot to get back on track for Dolidze and a good spot to push towards the top for Brendan Allen. Next up, David Onama. I just threw this one in because I find him to be a fun fighter. I really enjoy watching him, and I wanted to make a matchup for him. I almost did Joshua Van too, but I didn't end up because I had 11 already. But David Onama, this one's just a fun fight. Obviously, both guys relatively new. I believe that was Onama's 3rd fight. He's either 1-2 or 2-2. I can't remember if he's had 3 or 4 fights. But he would be 2-1 if it's 3 fights because he won his first one. Yeah, I think he's 2-1 because he lost to Nate the Train. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's something like that. But yeah, I have him matched up against another young guy, up and coming. Only 1 fight in the UFC. Looked really good. Came in on short notice versus Julian Erosa, who is no easy task. So on your debut, getting that done by finish in the first round is really impressive, showing how talented he is and the potential he has. And we've seen what Onama could do. His grappling looked better in this last fight. He's always had the hands and the power. This would be a barn burner. Both guys would walk forward and throw bombs. Both guys I'd say Padilla is a little bit better in the jiu-jitsu department, but both guys are okay on the ground. But the striking in this fight would be so much fun, and it would just be a good showcase for one of the young guys to get a win and keep pushing on. Next up, Amanda Ribas. She just lost to Macy Barber. She got finished in the 2nd round, and she needs to either fight down or kind of fight in that same level just to get back on track. This fight was booked earlier. Tracy Cortez had to pull out because of an injury, I do believe. She was either injured or sick or something, but this fight was scheduled. Both girls signed the dotted line already for the fight one time, so I don't see why not make it again. I believe they're, one or two spots from each other in the rankings. And Cortez just beat Melissa Gatto, who does fight this weekend. I'll talk about that tomorrow. And yeah, it would be good for Cortez to get a win against Ribas, really show off her grappling. And it would be a good spot for Ribas to get a win back versus a younger up-and-comer in the division. Next up, Maycee Barber. Speaking of an up-and-comer in the division, she needs a little bit bigger of a jump. I want to say she's ranked 8 now. I believe that's what I saw earlier today. It's either 8 or 7. So I believe, yeah, this kind of top 7 range is good for her. There's a lot of girls at the top of this weight class. Let me pull it up real quick. Women's flyweight who deserve a chance. So we have Firo versus Rose coming up. Valentina versus Grasso is going to happen. Blanchfield versus Tyler Santos. Andrade is fighting down the rankings against... Man, who is it? I can't even remember. She stepped in on short notice against somebody. But I can't remember who it is against off the top of my head. So there's a lot of matchups at the top of this division. So she can't really jump into the top 5 immediately unless she's willing to wait a little bit. So I think you go with Lauren Murphy. There's also, I was looking, you could go Caitlin Chukagian too. I think either one's fine. I just ended up picking Lauren Murphy. Either one, it would be a good spot for Maycee Barber to get a win against a veteran who's fought at the top. Both women have fought for the belt. I believe Chukagian has, right? I'm not just saying things. Am I? I don't know off the dome. Hold up. I'll type it in while I'm talking. But yeah, I'm pretty sure both, and I do think Chukagian just changed her name. She got married or something, so her last name's different on UFC now, and I can't remember what it got changed to off the top of my head. But let's see. Has she fought for a title? I assume this Valentina one in 2020 was for the belt. Yeah, flyweight championship, co-main event. So either way she goes, Chukagian or Lauren Murphy, both girls have fought for a title and not come out successful. So, but it's just the experience level both girls had. So it would be a really good spot for Barber to get a win, like I said, or one of the vets to stop the hype train of a young up-and-comer. And it would be, if the vet could do that, it would be impressive, and they would get to kind of keep their spot in that top 5 range, while Barber would have to kind of reset and try again. But whoever she goes with, I think you could go either way, Lauren Murphy or Chukagian. Either one makes sense, because it would just be a step up against a good vet for Maycee Barber. But yeah, next up, Josh Emmett, coming off of that main event loss to Ilia Topuria. Before this fight, losing in the interim championship against Yair Rodriguez by submission. So he's on a little bit of a slope right now, a downward slope. And he can't really, like, if they give him Brian Ortega or something, that would be stupid, even though Ortega hasn't fought in quite a while. Which I do have an idea about Ortega, which I'll talk about with the next fight. It's not against Ilia, but I do have an idea for Ortega. But yeah, Emmett needs to fight down, I think, quite a bit. Older fighter, that was probably his last chance to really make a push for the title, unless he can get back on track and keep knocking people out. But at this point, I personally don't see it. He's starting to slow down, in my opinion, and he's 37 or 38, definitely an older guy. I think he fights down the weight, or the weight class, the rankings, and a fun one would be this rematch. Emmett Ige 2, they fought quite a while ago in a close matchup. Emmett did end up winning, and yeah, it would be a good spot for Ige, who's on a nice little streak. I think 2 or 3 knockouts in a row now, to get a higher spot in the rankings, get this win back. And if Emmett can beat Ige again, it would be a really good win for him in terms of not having to shoot all the way back down the rankings immediately and have to try from that position. So it's a good spot for both guys if they get a win. I personally have a hard time seeing Emmett pushing for the title again. So, like I said, he does need to fight down the rankings quite a bit. And yeah, that would be against Dan Ige. I was also thinking you could go Sadiq Youssef, but I think they should make Sadiq Youssef versus Bryce Mitchell. Or maybe that is a matchup already. I can't remember. But yeah, I think those 2 fights should be made. And next up Ilia Topuria, coming off that win against Josh Emmett. Who does he fight next? I think you go for it. So this has to be, there's terms here, right? So Volk has to win against Yair, because if Yair wins, then they run that rematch back immediately, and Topuria has to wait or find a matchup in between that time, which I think would be tough for him in that top 5, unless it was a guy like Brian Ortega. But yeah, Max is booked, and I feel hard-pressed to give Max a 4th shot after being down 3-0 against Volk. He's fighting Korean Zombie. And yeah, Yair's booked. He's 2. 3 is Ortega. Don't know how he's 3. I feel like he's been sitting around forever. So I think you go Ortega versus Arnold Allen. 3 and 4 matchup. If Ortega loses again, he's got to fight down the rankings quite a bit. And yeah, that would be a real good spot for Allen to kind of get back into that title eliminator contention. But yeah, I think if Volk wins, you go Topuria. Ortega hasn't fought in forever and has lost to Volk. Arnold Allen just lost to Max, who feels like the gatekeeper to get to Volkanovski. Holloway's fighting Korean Zombie. Yeah, so like just this whole top 5 is locked up other than Ilia. I think this would make a lot of sense. I know the fans want it. It would be an absolute banger of a fight. So yeah, I think this is the one you go with. And I mean, if Ilia gets this done, man, what crazy scenes that would be. How impressive would that be if he could get off a title shot against Volk, coming from what he beat Jai Herbert, and then Bryce Mitchell, and then Josh Emmett. It's not like the craziest title run, but to get it done after only having those be your 3 toughest fights, that would be kind of crazy. And props to Ilia, but yeah, I think this would be a really fun matchup, a good spot for Ilia. Not like we don't know how good he is already, but to really show that he is top level, best in the world, type skill level. And it would be another shot for Volk to prove just how far off these contenders are, because if we're being honest, no one's been really, really close yet, other than Max in those first 2 fights. But since Max, it hasn't been close. Ortega had him in a choke, but he was never winning that fight. Volk was doing it handily. Korean Zombie didn't have a chance, and in the 3rd fight, Volk put on a masterclass against Max. So it would really just show how far away he is from even the rest of this top 5 in this division. But yeah, that's it for matchmaking for UFC Jacksonville. This upcoming weekend, we've got, I believe it's UFC Fight Night 76, Sean Strickland, Abus Magomedov. Crazy that Abus is getting a main event spot and a spot against Sean Strickland after 1 fight in the UFC against Dustin Stoltzfus. But it'll be really interesting to see how he can do. We've seen him get to the finals in PFL, so he's got skill. He's got the talent to be up in this spot, so it'll be interesting to see how he does getting thrown into it right away. But yeah, that'll be all for me now. Check out that video I posted yesterday, the recap of UFC Jacksonville. Tomorrow, Thursday, I will have predictions and bets for this card, UFC Vegas 76. And drop a like and a subscribe. Yeah, peace out.